Well, now I want to turn back to Greg Cassidy, who is filling in tonight for Chris Course and running the My Bill program for us. So, Greg, I shall turn it over to you, sir.
All right, so welcome to the My Build of May 22nd, My Build featuring you. And the reason I'm here is because Chris isn't. And he asked me to fill in. I'm sort of his Vanna White. Chris is off. He had to go to a convention of some kind, jokingly, a Shriners convention. But he sent me the My Build presentation. And I'm happy to say that it looks like everybody who has some slides in here tonight seems to be on the show. So we'll just go ahead and get started. And the first one up is Martin. Martin, I know you're here.
Well, I'm here as much as I ever am. Gosh, that looks very boring. No, that's the starting point. This is another one of those resurrection projects. And this is what I started with. That sort of had some rough doors cut out for probably a reefer. And everything else is missing except that scribe siding, I think. Well, there should be some more slides. So it's, yeah, a lot of nothing on the underside. And so, okay, so put everything back. Next slide. Yeah. Oh, it had a roof. That's right. It sort of had a roof. Not a lot there. Just some scribe siding and some roof walk supports. White metal end castings. I think I ripped those off later, but we'll see. I don't recall this car exactly. This is 6 months ago, so you know the memory goes. 6 months. That's it. Okay, next slide. Oh, and that's what it turned into. So we're going to skip right to the end. So yeah, Pittsburgh Chalmette Northern Railroad reefer for St. Mary's Brewing. And yeah, I had to add obviously everything except maybe some wood on the sides. Rework the doors. Those doors are rough cut, but everything else was added by me. And those are dry transfers from Clover House. It's one of the rare cars that I've done that's actually white. White is, for anybody who's built a car and tried to paint it white, painting white is almost as fun as painting something yellow. And this came out actually much better than I expected it to. So I think all I did was actually use white primer out of the spray can.
Right over the wood?
Right over the wood. Pretty sure I didn't use any primer on it. I think it's a white primer. Huh? It was Rust-Oleum flat white primer. So yeah, I painted it white, and then everything else is done by hand. And I just add all the pre-paint all the parts and add them later. So this came out a lot better than I thought it would. Yeah, well, maybe I kept the cast ends. I can't tell from my own photo. Okay, so I cut a hole in them so I could put the KD coupler through. But yeah, I was rather pleased with the way it came out, actually. Nice and simple and clean.
Well, Martin, I know any of us who have been on this show with any regularity see how you can scratch build cars almost in your sleep. And with Kurt talking about scratch build cars for the one AP certificate, if we haven't learned how after watching all these that you've built, shame on us.
Well, I'll go back to, I think Jim's question of Kurt was, where do you start? Well, I would also tell people that you start with something you know how to do, or something you enjoy doing, or something that you're good at. Get your feet wet with that as well. And strangely enough, the first certificate I got was cars, followed by, guess what? Author.
I
So,
think it doesn't hurt that you seem to have an unlimited supply of parts laying around.
um, I wouldn't go that far. They're starting, some of these parts are getting hard to find, and it's getting a little dicey on finding some of them. And even the really nice precision scale grab irons that I love to use, they don't have them in brass anymore. So, not too keen on the styrene ones. I've not had good luck with them.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Start casting brass.
No, I don't think so. I'm not interested.
Does anyone have any questions for Martin about his reefer?
Well,
All right. Well, thank you for showing, Martin. Another beautiful car.
yep.
And surprisingly, and this was before I knew I was going to be filling in for Chris, I'm next one up. So I know I'm here. I'm just a little late because I was going to be building along with Jack Judall during the section house that he was doing the build along about a month ago. But I got a late start because my workbench was in turmoil. I was putting up walls around it. And so I was about 2 weeks behind everyone else. But I finally finished it and I had sent the photos in to Chris. One thing I was going to do on mine was I decided two things. I was going to have a finished interior, which meant framing. And mine was not going to be a section house. It was going to be a Shade Tree Mechanics garage, which would have a car inside it. And at first I was going to use that Woody you see back there, but I went in a different direction. One of the things that I really liked about Jack's kit was his laser cut pieces for it. These windows in particular were cut out of laser board, and just putting a coat of paint on them and then scratching it up made them look like the paint really was wearing off of it. I also decided to put some lighting in it, and you can thank Bob Farquhar for turning me on to reed switches. I decided in this one that I'd go ahead and use one, and I got one that was meant to be used in an alarm system, and you can see the internal part there inside the back room, and that little white cylinder is the magnet that activates it and turns the lights on and off. And this is it finished. It's supposed to be a Shade Tree Mechanics garage back in the early 1900s. I've got the dirty windows. I've got the homemade doors. Some of the other stuff on it, I added and I changed from Jack's section house. But I wanted it to be early 20th century. So I found a 1902 Renault kit that I put together and put inside it. And I named it after a friend of mine who runs a garage and used to work on my car. And I was happy to get Jack's approval when I showed it to him. So that was my build. And I think now we'll be moving on to Dan Cohen. Dan, are you here?
I am.
All right, you've got 9 slides.
A few. So just a little backstory on this. My first kit build ever was from New Tracks Modeling when we did one of the first build alongs was the Blair Line General Store. And since then, I've built a lot of kits. I built from different manufacturers, and I've come back a couple of times, including this depot, because I wanted to try building a depot. And one of the tips I will give building other kits is if you're wanting to get started in kit building, in Craftsman kit building, Blair Line's a good one to start. They're pretty simple compared to some of the other builds to do. So it's a great way to start. So on this one, and when I build stuff, I don't usually build again and I don't try again or improve on stuff, which I should. but what I do is I try new stuff all the time. I have a motto I use all the time called "Just Jump In," and it was just my push to get into model railroading. So on this one, I was really stretching my skills, working in smaller parts with these, adding the 2x4s to cover the windows, breaking up the windows that you see here, a new technique with weathering. So I did a technique with mineral spirits and then scraping off the paint using that. And the other one I wanted to try was graffiti. So I'm a more modern modeler, and I like seeing graffiti on model railroads on railroad stuff. So I wanted to try that, and I'm not an artist, so I'm not going to be able to do the fancy stuff. So I actually picked up some Blair Line decals to try those. But what I did for the rest of it is I wanted to do some tagging, like you see most graffiti, in that I use they're called Posca markers. They're paint markers. So I use those in this build, and you can see the sides as I was working on those. So here I'm showing you the inside of the depot. So there's a passenger side, and there's a freight side. And I didn't really know what to do with the roof, to be honest, because I wanted to detail the inside. It's not something I've done with other builds. So what I actually ended up doing was staining all the wood for the roof and then breaking it up. And so that you have a view that you can view inside, and it looks broken up, and it looks like there's graffiti on it. And, on the passenger side, I built some benches and kind of roughed them up a little bit, broke them up to put them in there to show that it was abandoned. I had some other little detail parts as well that I threw in there. I actually tried to do cobwebs, but those are even big ones are so small in HO scale. You can't see them here. So that in the picture in the top middle, you can see I added in, I rusted up a coupler and threw that in, because why not? So more details of what I did. So all this prep work was the painting and the breaking everything up and getting that all set up before the build. So I on this build, I've never spent as much time as I did on the pre-work to the build. I used to just focus on getting the walls as square as possible and everything, and that wasn't as important to me here. It was really trying to do the graffiti piece and trying to make it look abandoned. And so you can see on the roof, I tried to do a little bit more fancy stuff, and you can't really tell what it is. I don't even know what it is, but I threw it on there.
Dan, I think if you're like me, this is where you find your creative juices flowing when you're not just putting it together the way the instructions say, but you're putting some of yourself into it, and you're experimenting with things, and you're learning about new things while you're doing it.
Yep. And it's amazing how recall works, and you figure out how to do things. So like the 2x4s across the windows, like how do you show in HO scale nails? Well, I just kind of put a dimple in the wood, and I use panel liner and to darken it. And that way it looks like there's some nails in there, and things like that you pick up along the way that you don't know you have in the back of your head. They do come out. I agree with that. And so what I was doing here is I was beating up whatever I could, putting holes in the doors and in the windows. And I really wanted to feature the windows and see what I could do with those. Yeah, those came out surprisingly well. I didn't know how those would come out with the acetate being so thin, but they did well. They scratched well, and I tried to vary them so they weren't all the same and didn't look uniform, and hopefully didn't look like a kit.
Mm-hmm.
So I added one, just wanted to feature one more of the decals that I put on the roof, and tried, and because I'm not great at decaling, I'm okay at it. And so the more I can practice, the better. And I really didn't know what to do with this. I don't really have a place on the 2 modules that I have for this. So I decided just to throw together a diorama and I had this Plastruct fencing. I had bought it because I had a birthday credit at a hobby shop. So, and I didn't really need anything or want anything. So I ended up getting this. I painted it with a chrome paint, and then I weathered it to give it some weathering. It still comes out in the pictures a little bit shiny, but and then I did put a cut. You can, on the top right, you can barely see it. In the middle, I tried to cut into the fence to show somebody was trying to get through or something like that. And then the base was all mostly woodland scenic stuff. So some ground foam, and then I wanted to practice the static grass because I've only used it a couple times, and so that's what I was doing over the track.
Yeah, well, the fence matches the station well. They're both rusty, dilapidated, and falling apart.
Thank you. And so here's some more pictures of the process, you know, and all the different things that I did, and tagged it. And some of the tags actually mean something and some mean absolutely nothing. I can't write that small. What I can see there, if you look at the bottom left, I have on the very bottom left, it says TCD. That's my Twin Cities division in Minnesota. So a little shout out to them, that sort of thing. I think I wrote on there that a bunch of teams that I don't like Boston teams, that I wrote on there that they suck and things like that. But some dates. I tried to put some years on. You see that sometimes, and tried to vary it. But most of it was really just gibberish that I just tried writing in to make it look like something. One of the, you know, a couple of the things I was thinking about on this one, there was a thing that frustrated me on this. While I was building it, I was still following the direction. So I was following the timing of everything, but I wanted to get to the graffiti when I was doing the walls. So what I didn't do is I didn't wait for all the trim to be put on, so you can see some of the graffiti cut off. And so that looks a little odd to me, but again, that's me looking at it day in and day out and
Yeah, I
staring
think
at
you're
it.
the only one noticing that probably.
Yeah.
And even graffiti artists probably run out of paint now and then.
Yeah. And here's some more shots of just getting in the grass that wouldn't stand up, that I really tried to get to stand up. The other thing that I would recommend to anybody working with ground foam and static grass and just scenery materials, don't be afraid to airbrush it to the color you want. All of the colors that I have are all vivid colors, and I absolutely didn't want vivid colors. So even the static grass that was considered straw or dead grass was really bright. And so I took a mud style paint and airbrushed lightly over the grass to try and kill it a little bit.
Yeah, it worked. It looks good.
And I included this. I don't, you know, if you look at it offline, you know, what did I add on to it? What are the tools I used? Because you don't always get that when people explain their builds. So
Yeah.
I just wanted that out here for folks.
That's very nice, Dan. Yeah.
Yep. And there you go.
All right. Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Dan about his beautiful station that I'm afraid has fallen on bad times?
I hope they took away the guys to jail that did all the graffiti.
They probably moved on to a water tower or a bridge abutment or something.
Well, I think it's amazing. I mean, that's my kind of build right there. So I thought it was great.
Yeah, that's right up your alley.
Yeah, if you ever need any help with graffiti, man, you can just ship it to me. I'll do it for free and ship it back. I love that stuff.
Okay. Duly noted.
I think we've started a tag team here.
Oh.
Sorry. All right. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Now, the next one that we have up here, Bob wasn't going to be able to be here tonight. I guess he's at a convention too. But he did send in a little information about what he was working on. And so I'm going to read that as I go through his photos. And this is him speaking. He says, for this first one, I've attached some photos of a fire escape that I've been working on for a street scene on the Gowanus and Northern, which I believe is the model railroad that he's working on. So this is a photo of the fire escape itself. For this one, he says all components were cut at home on an Xtool X2 laser. I'm happy to share the files if anyone is interested. And yeah, the way he wrote it, it's an Xtool X2 laser. I don't know my lasers that well, but I guess that's one type. And here he says, I'll be showing how I did this and other things over the summer on Sherry Johnson's new technology segments. So we'll get to see how Bob cut this out, put it together. I guess he must have done the design work for it as well. But I'm looking forward to see how he ended up making it. So now the next one up is Bernd. I know you're here.
Yep, I'm here.
All righty, you've got 12 slides here, so here we go.
All right, I'm building an HO N30 quarry line, and in this part of the basement, as I discovered that it was on the wrong end the way that I wanted to run it, so I moved it from this side, next picture please, to that side. And as you can see, I got a lot of extraneous stuff in the way, so to give you an idea of how big the layout is, and the next slide, this is, I drew this up in AnyRail CAD. I'm using the program more of to keep track of my work. I'm not actually using to design the track work. But you can see that it's 23 feet. The layout was actually at the bottom there with the 8 foot. It's now at the top. The middle portion is in 4x8. There's going to be something in there, and at the bottom is going to be where it transfers to HO standard gauge. Next slide, please. This is what it would look like. It was on the left over there. You can see I started a module with some styrofoam. The centerpiece is 4x8, where I'm thinking of putting, if some of you may remember, the Gump, Stump, and Snowshoe by Chuck Youngkirth. I started that module, and that's the one with the blue there. That'll be incorporated. Then on the other side, because I'm also using, I'm going to have an electric line, going to be little electric box cabs running. I'm going to have a power station in between there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next slide. And this is the side I moved it to. That's the old layout. And as you see, I still need to do the walls and stuff like that. Next one, please. There's the module. On the left is the one that I started. I did this in TT scale when I was playing around with that scale. I wanted to build a module that take to show people there's such a thing as TT scale. So I started with that, but as you can see, it never got done. The center module was going to be part of the TT scale too. It was going to be a logging, yeah, come on, spit it out. Where basically the engine house and stuff like that. And this design was done by Lyle Spears. And it was called the Western Logging Company. And it was in the Model Railroader in December 1963. The plan was in there. And the one on the right, I haven't any idea what I'm going to do with that yet. I might use it for something else. Over to the next one. Okay, so I decided to build a whole new unit, and that is 1x4 pine lumber, and I used Craig screws to put it together and then screwed it to the wall. Obviously, use a level to make sure it's level against the wall. Next one, Greg. And I hated the legs underneath my first layout I had of this. There's no way to actually sweep up underneath it or store anything underneath it. So I decided to go with braces like this. And I think it's 1/2-inch plywood that's on there. Next one.
Nice.
Now here I have the backdrop there with the the gray is, I use that from the old layout. That's pink styrofoam, and then I've decided that I was gonna have 3 layers of track. The main track's gonna be down on the bottom. To the right there, you see the rock crusher building. I believe I mentioned this once. I've used soapstone and made over 1,000 little soapstones and glued them onto that building. The idea is that the top track is the main line. It's going to swing around behind that piece of wood there. And that's going to be like not a storage area, but off the layout where the quarry is. And then the main line comes back, and I don't know, you can't see it too well with the blue foam, but it slopes down to the left. It'll be a switchback to the crusher building. Next one. This gives you a lengthwise view. It's an 8-foot long. I temporarily pinned down Pico ON30 track to get an idea of how this would work out. And those are my 3 little electrics there that I think Jim would find interesting since they're all scratch built.
Yeah, and
So,
you can see the slope here, Bern. You can see
Yeah.
it going down from the upper to the lower.
okay, now to the next one.
Oh, there.
Here
there
you
go.
got a good idea. It's a little
Mhm.
steep, but you got to remember these are little tram lines, and they use steep grades as long as the locomotive was in front of the load. Hopefully, you could stop at the end of the switchback there. Okay, next one. And that's the end of it. That gives you kind of an idea of what the slope is like. This is just the start of it. There'll be more as I go along. That's basically what I'm working on.
Now, Bernd, are you going to have overhead for those?
Oh, right now, I was thinking about that. The one problem with having really using overhead would be the poles and stuck in the foam.
In the foam, yeah.
Would be very rigid. So it basically those are Kato 11109 chassis that I built those on. So they pick up from the rail. I might just stick with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I am going to go with radio control in these. I've got radio control modules that will eventually be put into that.
Great. Well, I hope you take us along while you're doing that.
And the other 2 up above is what I call the twins. Those are 2 diesel box cabs that are built on N scale DD40 trucks. They're both powered and they run beautiful together. So those I want to put radio control in also, but it'll be track pickup. So
That's really impressive rock work that you have behind there. That my wife should see that. She's a geologist.
Well, what I did, those are actually foam tile, ceiling tile. And
Wow.
I broke them up to a certain, I forgot, maybe an inch or so. And what I did is, one guy says, well, strata isn't that straight. It has a tendency to curve a little bit.
Mhm.
He says, you ought to curve it. Well, I discovered that if a ceiling tile gets wet, it's like a piece of wet noodle. So what I did is the portion that goes up like that, I wet it down. I think they come in 4-foot long strips. I cut 4-foot long strips, soaked them in water, and put them on a piece of wood so they would drape like that. And then
Wow.
glued them all together on there. And what I did on the left, you can see what's sort of a yellowish color.
Mhm.
That is Durham putty, wood putty. I used some of that and then just painted it on before I used acrylics to paint the structure, and then highlighted it a little bit with white paint. What are they called? Dry brushed it.
Uh-huh. Well, it's very impressive looking. It looks just like a road cut that we have out in Western Maryland in this area.
Well, when we've got a place up to Thousand Island, and as you go up Route 81, we go through a lot of that strata that you
Mhm.
see from the Niagara Escarpment.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting to take pictures so I could get this right. And I guess I really don't need pictures anymore. So there'll be
Look at
more
your
of this.
layout.
There'll be more of this coming along. So
Great. Does anyone have any questions for Bernd? All right. Well, thank you for sharing that with
You're
us,
welcome.
and make sure that you continue us on this journey.
well, the two little box cabs Jim's got me for this coming October to describe how I built those.
Okay, great.
Vern, thanks so much. That's
Sure.
gorgeous what you're doing.
Thank you.
All right, and Bill, I think I saw you were here. Bill Freeland, are you not with us?
I don't see him, Craig.
Okay. All right, well, it looks like I don't
Beautiful.
think Chris had any information on it either. But from what I remember, he was showing a part of his layout that was a coal mining area. And it looks to be HO. And it's quite a layout that he's working on here. It's very impressive. I was hoping he was here. I wanted to ask him about those things in the background, if they're actually being supported from the ceiling, which it kind of looks like they might be.
He's got an awful lot of detail in it.
Yeah, this is a beautiful little structure here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and quite a few levels on this layout. So I'm sorry he's not with us, but maybe we can get him to come back and talk about it at some point. Anyway,
Absolutely.
that's Bill Freeland's layout. So, Mr. Pat, you're up next. And I'm sorry, I cut you short. You have 24 slides. I thought you only had about 12. Pat?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I thought you fell asleep.
I'm just got lost in the trees. It's a crossing into the sawmill I scratch built, most of it, about 80% of it.
Wow.
Some of it was part of another building I took and added more to it, more details. And the interior is completely detailed. And it has sound too. So if you stand near it, you can hear the sawmill actually running.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's my little gang car shed I put together from an ITLA kit. And I decided to detail this the heck out of the interior and add a gentleman that's working on something for the car. So yes.
Yeah, I know that kit. That's a nice little kit. Good job.
It is a nice kit.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an on view of the engine yard. And you'll see in the background the coaling tower and one of those Walthers O-scale water towers. And in the bottom down there in the front of the coaling tower, you'll see a sand house. And in the back right-hand side, you can see the beginning of my engine house, which has got pits in it right now. I designed in the pits already in there, as well as lit it up.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see some of the engines there. This is the switching tower of the engine yard. That's totally super detailed, the interior of that thing. If you look
And the
inside,
exterior.
pardon me?
Just
Yeah.
all the brackets holding the downspout in place.
Yeah, I put them with a sort of a staple on them.
Mhm.
And then I added a brick paper to the bottom and the windows, and I added lights over the doors and a light out front. And inside you can see the, I don't know if you can see it there. You can just barely see the inside where have the board on the back there with the printing of the track work going into the sawmill yard and the engine yard.
Mm-hmm.
And it has all of the levers and stuff. You can pull the switches, and the piping in the front is to go to each one of the switches.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah. And this here is another view of the sawmill, the loading deck. That's where the material comes out at the end after it goes through the rip saw that's there. And everything is run on electric. So I purchased electric motors for all the detail
Well, now
parts.
is that pallet of wood, are those all individual pieces of strip wood?
Yes. I
Wow.
have lots of wood to play with.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Hey,
just
Pat.
happen to have a lot of wood to play with.
Hey,
Yeah.
Pat, Tom Farrell here.
Yes, Tom.
What's the stonework there? What is that?
That is a type of almost like a wallpaper, and I purchased that from someone in Czechoslovakia, and I put some other people onto it, and they found it there too. I don't know the name of the fella. It's strange. Anyway,
Yeah, Mark at Foggy Mountain Models sells that stuff now.
yeah,
He gets it from that guy in Czechoslovakia.
you get sheets of it.
Yep.
So anyway, what I did, I used a water-based contact cement. And I applied it to the back of that, and I applied it to the foam core board. And then I added windows and everything else, of course. And then I weathered the stonework a little bit. So yeah, I don't know. It's just what I used to work in a sawmill, so I kind of got an idea how it works.
Uh-huh.
Is
That's
it
like, that's
is
like
it
cheating.
photo paper or is it
It's like a
texture?
wallpaper almost, but it's bumpy. They call it bumpy
Okay.
texture.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's got a texture in it, and then the image is printed on it, but it's
Yeah.
very, very good printing, and the texture makes it actually look quite real.
It does. From a distance, you couldn't tell unless you went up
Yeah.
close to it.
We say embossed. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you
ahead.
might have met Mark Shear up when you were up at Harrisburg, Tom.
Yeah, I know him. He's a friend of mine. He
Yeah,
stayed at my
yeah.
house.
He's the one that's bringing a lot of it in now.
I'll have to see him in a week or two.
Yep.
I ordered a pile of sheets to start doing some other work. Yeah, rock work with trees. I happen to like trees, I guess you might say.
Where did you get the bulk of your trees from, Pat? Did you make them? Did you
Yes,
find?
I did. They're all
Okay.
scratch built.
Wow.
Patch just branching out.
Ah, yeah, right.
Um,
Those trees are all made from balsa wood trunks and I used Caspia and I used other materials from Bragdon Enterprises.
Okay.
Yeah, they had that branch fixtures that you could buy from them in bags.
Yeah.
I used that stuff too. And I used some other live flower type stuff in the background, and I just hodgepodge the whole thing together. A little bit of lichen.
That's very nice.
Thank you.
The rock work is beautiful too, especially
you.
since it's called a rock scene.
Yeah.
Spend all our time on the trees.
Yeah.
You can't see the rocks for the trees.
That's right. It'll get worse later on, maybe. And here's a view of the loading area for the planer mill, which I scratch built. And there's the deck. And the doors operate.
Hmm.
I added chain work and banding around the pile so it wouldn't fall apart. And that crane does move back and forth, and it is lit. I like
That's what I
lighting.
think you were showing us when you were building that.
Yes, I did.
That was a lot of work, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was fun though. Not too many people like doing those metal kits. I don't know. And there's another one on the sawmill that picks up the logs and then pulls it over to the log loading deck. And that's all scratch built, every bit of that.
Wow. Now, that log, I guess, is just a twig, right? But it looks so real.
Yes, it is. It's sort of a large twig that it looked good, so I used it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you got that good Canadian wood up there.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Another close view of the sanding tower and building, plus the coaling tower. Now, all that stairwell going up the side of that, I built all the railing on there, and I redid the stairway because I didn't like what they had in the kit.
Mhm.
Then I added a doorway at the bottom, which it didn't have. And at the top, I added a doorway. I don't know if you can see it at all in the other pictures, but I added a doorway at the top plus lighting. And I'll tell you, it was fun putting that kit together because it's all plastic. And you got to
Oh.
put it together so it looks like it's been poured cement.
Yeah.
You know what it's like trying to hide the joints on plastic. It's just something else. So I covered a little bit up with rust and
You
black.
did a good job. It sure doesn't look like it.
Thanks. That there water thing you saw there in the back there was a Lionel one. It fits so well, I just added a chain to it and put it on the on the layout.
All right.
Scratch built, straight trestle, every bit of it. I even cut the material myself. I had a nut and bolt castings and I stained the material myself. It's the whole thing, all the bents. It was quite fun, really. I enjoy building stuff, though.
Well, now you see, this is the kind of trestle that would make Al Collins cry, because he makes all those wonderful tools where you can cut everything at an angle and get it to fit perfectly. And you don't need to with any of yours.
Yeah, right. You just leave it blunt end. The nut and bolt castings really added to it. I tried to put it everywhere you could see the
Yeah.
Inside note.
Yeah, and you got your little friend there.
Oh, yeah, the old bear, the grizzly. It's all in the Canadian Rockies, so there are grizzly up there.
Mm.
If you really look at the layout, you'll find a guy with a shotgun going after it. So anyway, this is a dynamite shed. This is all made from a castings of hydrocal castings, stonework. And then I made the roof and added that photo etched, or that photo paper that looks like corrugated steel.
Mm.
Then I made it look kind of rough looking and I added the rust work to it. Then I put all kinds of signs on there. Stay away. Yep.
Well, that's really nice painting on the stonework. It makes it look quite realistic.
Yeah, I enjoyed doing that. It was sort of a dark grayish. When it hit the when it hits the hydrocal castings, it seems to soak in and
Yeah, it goes right into it.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to have the right color the first time because you'll never cover
It'll
it.
never look that right.
Yeah.
Then I weathered it with some powders.
Uh-huh.
Oh, this is yeah, okay. This is one of those little I don't know, one of those cranes that you use to lift stuff up with. Inside's got a little engine, steam engine. Nothing too fancy. Black car, trucks underneath, all that good stuff.
Did you just throw this together, or was this a kit?
Yeah, it was thrown together.
Wow.
And it also lifts up and down. I have to, it can be lifted up or down, but I don't like doing that too often. Otherwise, it'll start falling apart on you.
Well, everything wears out.
Yep. And it does spin. Believe it or not, it does spin.
Wow.
Yeah. I built that from a plastic kit. I forget who was the manufacturer of it, but I built that thing. And when I got the kit, all the lights were busted on the front, the two lights. So I remade the lights. I made metal vents on them and put them into the casting. It was all metal. And the tracks were rubber. So then I wanted to make it look like it's been around the world.
Is that Russian writing on the front?
Yeah, you might call it that. I never paid attention to it. I just put it together. I didn't do anything particular to it except paint it in certain areas, the mufflers, and there was no breather on top, so I had to make one for that, and the muffler was gone. All the little stuff.
Well, it looks like I like the muddy seat. I wouldn't want to have to sit there though.
Yeah, right. Yeah, pretty bad. Another close look at the coaling tower. That those two chutes I scratch built. And the chains, I put the chains on with fishing weights. And I added the lights at the top, just underneath the pulleys. And those things actually go up and down.
Wow.
And they stay where you put them. So I make sure they're up when I go through with an locomotive.
No, it sure doesn't look like plastic.
Thank you. Nut and bolt castings on them too. Yeah. Another view of the planing mill. Night view.
Mm-hmm.
You might think I like lighting, don't you?
You said those doors operate?
Yes, they do.
Wow. Did you have to make the
back and
hinges?
forth.
Did you have to make the hinges?
No, I happened to find some hinges that were available. But then I ran into a problem. I couldn't find them anymore. So then I tried to get some from Precision Scale, and I did find some from Precision Scale in brass. And oh my gosh, by the time I got them here, I thought I was paying the world for them. Oh, anyway, that's another story. And the lumber around the sawmill area with all the night lights.
Big
I guess it really
corporation like
helps.
you, a big corporation like you, Pat, we shouldn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, right. I even got our name on the sawmill. You didn't catch that one.
Huh? I guess it really helps to have worked in a sawmill and you know all the
You know a
ins and
little bit of
outs.
what you want to do.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Ah, there's the pits for the engine head I'm going to be
Uh-huh.
building. As you can see, it's the start. And Gary keeps bugging me to get onto it.
Yeah, well, they're having to work out in the open right now. Come on.
Yeah, I know. He says, if you're not doing anything, I won't judge it. Anywho, that's another picture of the planer mill again.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that looked similar.
Yeah, very much similar. Close up.
Okay.
Every building I try to put figures in and machinery that presents itself for the shed. I did build the planer for it. I
Wow.
couldn't find one, so I built one.
Well, I mean, it all goes together. You get the lighting, you want the interior. If you
Yep.
if you have the machinery, you want the people working at it.
Yeah. And it has sound too, believe it or not.
Wow. Where did you get the sound files?
I got it from City, what was it? There's two companies that produce the sound. I gave it, Tom got the sound system. Where did it come from, Tom? Do you remember now?
I'll go look in a sec. Hold on.
Yeah.
Huh.
I got him hooked on the sound too. Go ahead, Jim. The heart of the works.
Uh-huh.
That's the easy DCC system. And if you
Okay.
look closely, there's all radio controlled that system. And in the back on top is where I divided up. There's a transformer on the right that I hook up to the block that I used to run all my switches.
Mhm.
I try not to run any equipment from that system because it'll draw down your power on anything that you put on there. It just makes it more difficult if you have more problems. So I
Hey,
just
Pat.
eliminate it. Pardon me?
It's engineering. N as in
Engineering, yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pat, can I assume the alligator clips are just temporary?
Yeah, I had to test something. I actually ran into a problem about 8 years
Ah.
later after I had that system. And I have to say, for that company, I sent back, they gave me some ideas on how to test it. So I
Uh-huh.
tested it and found out that there was a blown capacitor or something in it, and it had to be sent back to get fixed. So I sent it back to them, and they sent me the whole thing for nothing.
Wow.
So I say they're a good company.
Yep.
And you can see the aerial. There's a system, front on view.
Nice.
Actually, that'll run 2 locomotives besides my radio controlled handhelds. So I can actually run a dozen locomotives if I wanted to, but nobody can control that many locomotives on my small layout. It'd be a catastrophe. Anyway, go on. Oh, you don't need that. No, just keep going. You don't need that one.
Well, wait, what does that say? That award for service to the division. Okay, what did you do to earn that? Tell us about it.
I don't know. No, I helped out a lot. I tried to help out where I could anyway.
I mean, you got Gordy's signature down there.
Yeah, believe it or not.
Pat does an awful lot in the division, so don't let him kid you.
Anyway, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that curve trestle, that was something else. Because that one runs right into a switch that runs right into the engine yard. Right at the end on the left side.
Uh-huh.
And man, I'll tell you, I made sure it ran in there before I put it together with all the scenery. Because there's no way you could change it.
Now, when you built trestle, did you then build the scenery to match it, or was the scenery in place when you built the trestle?
I had the scenery in place before I put the trestle in place. I
Okay.
had the trestle completed, and I had it mounted to a curved section to fit it in there. I turned all the bents upside down on that curved piece of plywood I had, and mounted it onto the ties.
Uh-huh.
And then I just put the rail on afterwards. I had the rail on the plywood to begin with when I took it off. Anyway,
All
yeah.
right.
Oh, back to the same one again.
Now it says it's a larger view of it.
Oh, larger view. Oh, okay. It's just larger rocks. Okay.
We see more trees.
I got to tell you something. Up in the top of that mountain, I had a little O-scale size Tyrannosaurus Rex, and he's up there somewhere. And I use it as a thing for the guys when they get together. I says, find him. It was fun.
Well, now those look like they come pretty close to your ceiling.
Yes, within about 3 or 4 inches.
Wow. So
And the backdrop is all made from done with a wallpaper. And I bought some wallpaper with the clouds in it already, and I had that all applied on the wall before I started building the layout.
Well, that's the time to do it.
You got it, because it would have been a nightmare otherwise.
Wow. Well, that's beautiful. I've only seen glimpses of your layout here and there, and then that photo of the trestle behind you all the time. So this is wonderful. Does anybody have any questions for Pat?
Shoot away. I hope everybody enjoyed it.
That trestle is really something, Pat.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Well, you don't have any kind of estimate on how many trees you had to make, do you?
Oh, no, I never kept track of how many. I would say there's close to 400 on that layout.
Wow. I
It
think I
cost you-
see 100 of them right here.
Yeah. It's a very expensive thing if you have to go out and buy them all. So I
Yeah.
used to try and show people how to build them. They're not difficult. You just got to put your mind to it. I think I did a clinic on that on here with another fellow. How we did it.
I seem to remember something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was way back. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Pat.
You're very welcome.
Pat,
All
I
right.
have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
You said you cut your own wood for the trestle.
Yes.
What kind of saw do you use? Do you have one of those micro saws or a regular table saw?
I got a regular table saw. It's the Shopsmith. And I
Okay.
cut it all on there. It's all them bents are made from cedar. Then I made myself a thing to stain them in the creosote color. And it was made out of a tube, ABS tube. And I plugged the one end with a cap.
Yep.
And the other end I left loose. So I poured my India ink inside of it, and I dropped all my wood inside of that, and I shook the heck out of it. And then I poured out all the India ink into the container again. Of course, I filtered it. And then I took and dried the pieces, and that's the way they came out.
You know, I'm not surprised in Canada you're building your trestles out of cedar.
Well, when you worked in a lumber yard, I used to come across a lot of pieces of everything. Anyway, I enjoyed
And
it.
what scale is this?
O scale, 2 rail.
Okay. Okay.
All righty. Thank you, Pat.
Very welcome.
Hey, Gary, are you ready to go?
I'm here.
All righty. We've got 16 slides for you.
Oh, very good. Okay, a while back on the show, I did a clinic on scratch building a machine shop using these siding pieces that you see. And it consisted of 4 of the pieces. And when I built this here's the car shed, it's building number 3, which completes my series that I was doing for the layout. I did the engine house first, the machine shop, and this is now the car shed. This is totally scratch built. It took 10 of those castings. You see 3 of them on each side of the long part of the building, and cut ups on the front, and 2 pieces that were fitted for the back. Also, my shingles, which I showed you how to do using pruning shears. And I decided to put a water supply on the roof. And just basically scratch built the exhaust chimneys, and then put up fire barrels along the top, just in case. Next slide. This here shows the front, the sections you can see there that were on the very front. The doors are all scratch built, and they do open and close. I decided this time, rather than put wood, because the building is such a large building, that the upper portion of the side above the doors, that's all steel siding, which has been weathered and dilapidated a little bit. The roof is quite large, as you can see. See further on how the roof turned out and was constructed. Next slide. This is the back portion. Now, what I'd done here, I'd taken 2 of the castings and fitted them together, and you can see just to the right of the power source going in to the right of the window, just see where I had joined those together, and I wanted those roughed up, just a little bit of beading and weathering on the brickwork. And then the back door, which leads into the shops, that was scratch built. The windows were done by ITL for me. As I say, I've had these castings for a long, long time, and I'm slowly using them up. I still have a lot left. And same type of material on the back part of the roof area on the side, which is
So,
the
Gary, the shingling, if I remember, you were showing how you use those pinking shears to cut them out and get that. So you had to cut all of those strips, right?
That's correct.
That's a lot of cutting.
It took a few weeks to finish that roof.
Wow.
That is a very large roof.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy process as long as you line everything up. You can see a little bit of raising just down from the top area there, but it actually does. It's the roof was painted a gray color, and then of course weathering chalks and that were put on. It's the same with the stonework and the brickwork. There's a little bit of weathering chalks here and there. Now, one of the things is it's always nice to photograph your layouts, or I'm sorry, your buildings or projects you're doing. And because you look at a photograph, you see your mistakes.
Yeah.
And if you look to the right of the door, you can see where I forgot to paint the concrete strip.
Oh, on the top
goes
of
around the corner, just above the stonework.
Uh-huh.
So I have to go back and paint that. I never noticed that till I did the photograph. So that sort of points out your little areas that you've got to touch up.
Yeah, well, at least it's an easy fix.
Yes, yeah, just a little bit of concrete paint.
Uh-huh.
Next slide. Now this is the interior. I decided to completely detail the interior, which I did. And just about everything in there, with the exception of the people and the two vehicles and the machinery, is all scratch built. All the workbenches, coils, ladders, the crane, the two small cranes at the front and the back. Everything there is scratch built. Even the flat car that they're building inside. And I have in the lower right corner, that's washroom, and it's totally detailed inside.
Mm.
And then on the bottom right is the office, and it's totally detailed with a couple of gentlemen in there, one sitting down having a coffee, and the other two are discussing the business of the day.
And
Yeah.
Gary, this is all in HO scale, if I remember.
This is all HO scale.
Uh-huh. Wow.
Go to the next one. Yeah, just again, you can see the barrel, the little lift truck, and gentlemen, they're moving some of the spools into the corner there and piling them up. There's a couple of gentlemen at the workbench talking to each other. There's a gentleman there cleaning up some stuff on the floor. Another gentleman over by the welding tanks, cleaning up and moving tanks. And then you get a better shot of the washroom in the corner there.
You know, that is the nice thing about working in Hydrocal, is you don't need to have bracing inside, so you can finish the interior.
Yeah, well, what was nice about these castings, so like those side walls, that's 3 castings. And I put them together using San-Latex crazy glue.
Uh-huh.
And they kept coming apart. So what I did was I drilled holes on each side of those panels. And then I put wire in and reconnected them again. And that really strengthened those walls quite a bit, because they broke on me a couple of times.
Okay.
I figured it needed stronger bracing.
Yeah, so your walls actually have rebar in them.
Yeah. And the wainscoting all the way around the building, just to give the workers, you can see the tools on the wall there over the workbench. Signs, there's an electrical panel. Those little gray cranes near the front doors, and that one crane inside that yellowed off work area, those are all scratch built.
Wow.
And the big crane that runs in the middle, that's all scratch built. Next slide. Just to get another shot looking the other way. These were taken outside in the harsh sun, so you don't see too much at the doors coming in. But you can see the office. In the office, signs on the wall, signs outside, benches on. Some of the machinery that the gentlemen are working on. Of course, the bandsaw and that they're cutting material to put planks on the flat car.
Gary, a question about the roof. You obviously had to make it so it was easily removable. It's just all built as one separate structure that just sits on top, it looks like.
Yeah, I think you have a slide of it.
Oh, okay, great.
It was done when I did the machine shop. I just used a magnetic jig, but when I did the this shop here, the car shop, I made a jig, because I think there's 24 rafter.
Wow.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of the rafters that had to be built. So I made a jig, which made things much simpler. Next slide. Yeah, just a couple, just showing the closer, a little closer. There's a gentleman bending over. There's actually on that work table that he's at, that's a drawer that is open and he's bent over reaching into the drawer to get some.
Wow.
The gentleman at the one milling machine, standing there. There's little chairs, compressors. You can see some of the electrical boxes.
Yeah, I like all the electric hookups. I was just noticing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that run in. The middle bench in the middle where the workers are working. It's probably one of the highly detailed interiors I've ever done.
Uh-huh.
And I kept going and going, and Pat came over and checked it out, and he said, "Oh, I think you're there." Had a little.
Well, I don't know. You probably look and say, "Wait, I could put one more worker in that little area."
Yeah, there's. I think there's 26 workers in there,
Wow.
which is not too bad.
And only one washroom, huh?
Only one washroom. Again, this is showing, you can see the off to the right, you can see the office. And there's 3 people in the office, one sitting outside at the front, resting on a bench. The back door area, you see the bathroom with its water closet, and it's got a toilet and a sink in there. One gentleman coming out. The electrical boxes on the back wall, and the emergency exits light over top
yeah,
of
the
the
exit light, yeah.
rear door.
Wow.
Next slide. Yeah, another closer look. This is looking at the front. There's a stamping machine, the gentleman off to the left near the front. Couple of ladders. The crane that you see at the front. What's happening is the overhead unit had broken down, and they've got it down, and they're putting up a new one.
Ah.
That's why the ladders are there. And the forklift truck.
You got a story for every person working there, right?
Yeah, everyone's busy doing something. Next slide. Okay, this again, just showing a close-up of the roof. I like building these little tanks. They're all scratch. That's a plastic roof that I had from another project I did years ago, and utilized it for the roof of the tank.
Mhm.
Put in some water columns for draining, and ladder to get up to the walkway.
Nice.
Then the barrel. Okay, this is the roof.
Wow.
And it's all scribed as you, like when you look underneath, when you take it off and look underneath.
Mm-hmm.
It's all scribed. And then, of course, you put on both sides. The roof took a while to build also. Like, it's a very, very big roof.
I'll bet, but it's very impressive seeing all those rafters looking identical.
Yeah, it was nice. Like when you're building rafters, when you're doing multiple rafters,
Yeah.
you do need a jig.
I did that once, but I was only making 6. So my hat's off to you with all these.
Well, the nice thing when you're doing this is you do the jig and you keep the jig.
Uh-huh.
So in future builds, you have a jig, which is quite nice.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, that just shows the detail. And here again, another shot of the interior. Did a lot of shot. The crane that you see there, it's a fixed crane. And it was a bit of a challenge to build, but it has a motorized unit that slides back and forth. And you can see there's a spool hanging
Uh-huh.
from the winch.
Did you just build it out of styrene shapes?
Yes, it was done out of styrene shapes.
Wow.
The winch itself was an actual little kit, all metal, and it was all put together and then adapted for on there.
Very
It turned
nice.
out good.
Yeah.
You got a Coke machine in the back, and you got a Pepsi machine in the front. There's the Pepsi machine on your
Very nice.
right,
Over there. on
right,
the-
just
Very
behind the gentleman
Uh-huh.
directing the forklift.
Wow.
Gary, what do you make your jigs out of?
I'm a good friend of Pat's, and I get quite a supply of wood. So between the two of us, we do a lot of
I got
cutting our own wood out of whatever material we could get from the mill.
gotcha.
There's a couple of other shots showing the front and
Yeah.
roof area. The stacks that you see there, the exhaust stacks, I had just taken some styrene tubing and O-scale vents that came off of they were just parts that I had, those O-scale, and made some the larger tubing short, longer tubing, and then put those smokestacks that would turn in the wind,
Mhm.
and that was the used as the exhaust system.
And all of your doors, you just scratch built them out of wood?
Those are all scratch built out of wood.
Nice. It's a very imposing building.
Yeah, it took like the whole, as I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning, there's three sides, well, three sections on one side per side, and
Uh-huh.
altogether there were 10 sections. The back was cut up to fit the dimension I needed, and the front was all cut up so I could get the doors and the track in the right place. But
Wow.
this will go on the layout, and then I'll have all three buildings in the yard that
Yeah,
will
the
match.
machine shop and the engine shop.
And
Well,
yeah,
be sure and show us a picture of all of them together once you have them on the layout.
when I get them all done, I'll take a picture and show it.
Anybody have any questions for Gary?
Yeah, Gary, weather those barrels.
Yeah, I know. They're too red.
Well, I mean, they had to be new at some point.
You're right.
All right. Thank you so much, Gary.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
And last up, we've got Father Ron.
Hello.
And you've got 4 slides, sir.
Correct. If you remember a number of weeks ago, Tom Farrell did Shantytown, and Martin Breckbill did the threw together a house out of scrap wood. So I decided to look through my scrap boxes to see what I had to throw together a building. I didn't quite use everything you see on the list there, or on the sheet there, but just as stuff left over from kits. And I started to, and I did add a few other things along the way, but this is the main stuff I started with.
Nice.
And I managed to put together something. And you see some of the extra stuff, the HO scale lumber down at the bottom, but I had an old roof that I had used. It was the wrong slant, or whatever you call it, pitch to it. So I had to redo the pitch for it to match the gabled end of the building. And I decided not to use the foundation, mainly because I had mismeasured the wood for the foundation and it didn't fit after I got everything glued together.
Mhm.
And that's why there's stairs there. You see right at the one corner of the foundation. I didn't use the foundation, so I didn't need the stairs.
Ah. Well, they go back in the spare parts box for your next build.
That's right. That's right. And so this is
Ah.
the building that was finished. You can see I had to put a straw in for a vent of some sort. If someone's using the building and needs to go to the bathroom, you got to have water behind the flushing. So,
Mhm.
or at least you have to have a stove in there to heat in the wintertime. So I put a straw in. It's just one of those plastic straws you use for stirring your coffee. And I painted it black, and I've done some weathering on it. That was a new technique for me, the weathering on the shed there on the side.
I was very noticing that. I like that quite a bit.
It was one of those what do you call it? It's oil paint. And
Okay.
the linseed oil that you use to dilute it, or whatever you call it, I don't know, it's turpentine or whatever that is, but it's no fragrance to it. It's the
odorless type.
Turned the thing upside down is what I did, and I put a little dabs on the top and let the linseed oil run down the side. And of course, when you turn it back over, it looks like the water had hit it and run down the side. So
yeah, it's just wicking up. Yeah, I like that.
And I think that's the back side of it there. The other 3/4 view. So it's just some sort of a shed, like Martin Breckbill's building was some sort of a shed. So,
well, now you get to imagine whose it is and what it is. You know, as a hunter's shed, you could find a little figure of a hunter to put in front of it, or some miner's shed or something.
Yes. Well, I don't have a layout, so it'll be whoever gets this when I give it away, what they decide to do with it. So,
all right. Well, thank you so much for sharing it, Father Ron. Anybody have any questions?
Father Ron, what are the shingles?
It's from a kit. I don't remember. It was part of a kit, and I decided not to use the roof on that kit and put a different roof on it, and decided to save this one.
They almost look like they're one by one. Each one.
It was. I really don't remember.
Well, they're nice looking shingles. They look like cedar shakes of some kind.
It could be.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us.
You're welcome.
Okay, now, the next My Build coming up, which is June 19th, about a month from now, is going to be a water challenge, which means anything having anything to do with water, waterfront buildings, wharves, boats, covered bridges, water tanks, anything at all water related. You know, we like the challenges because it gives people a chance to kind of have a theme, but we don't want it to exclude anybody. So it's a very wide ranging tolerance in terms of what it can be. So if anybody has anything they want to send in, and I know I will, send it to Chris at railrunner130@hotmail.com. And he'd like to get them by the 16th. That's the weekend before the show, if you can. And for the challenge giveaway, which we tried last time, and we weren't able to come up with a way of picking anyone. For this time, we'll be giving away this kit, which I had donated last time, but he still has it. So whoever gets voted to fit the theme the best will get this kit to walk home with.